beg, borrow or steal food at the moment in order to feed those suffering people. They have suffered incredibly over the last 12 months. Incredibly.
One day I asked one of the mothers to give me her identification card for the book. But instead, she just pulled up the little child's dress and she showed me the child's body. It was so emaciated and so bad.
This was the first humanitarian disaster brought into the living rooms of the world by television. In plain sight, here were the child victims of a policy of deliberate starvation, tacitly supported by Britain.
At one stage, we started to bring out children who were nearly dying. And Kevin would look at a child and say, he won't last the journey. And he'd give him back to the parents, and it was like a sentence of death.
Reverend Doran, who is to blame for the deaths of the children as far as you're concerned?
I never like putting blame on anybody. I just try to stop the actual death itself. I mean, it's no good in looking for who caused this and who hasn't caused it. The poor child is dying, try and save it.
What I was trying to do, what I'd set out to do, was help the people in need at that particular time in that particular situation.
Famine is very rarely due to a climatic event or natural disaster. It's always almost the consequence of a war, of a political situation. I think that's one of the reasons the Irish were so stirred by the sight of the famine in Biafra, which so clearly was caused by a government decision to create blockades and to stop food getting in.
We feel neglected. We feel that the Western world and the American world don't seem to realize the problem and don't seem to care. The jets are coming. We better take cover. This is what the hospital we would expect that it would be actually.
Just above the mission now, one MiG-17, less than 300 feet high, strafing the ground as they move, dropping incendiary bombs and fragmentation bombs in the marketplaces around here.
Harnessing the new medium of television, they exposed what was happening in Nigeria to the world, saving lives but making powerful enemies.
Reverend Doran, in your estimation, who are the real villains in this matter?
Well, if you want me to put my finger on the real troublemakers are the people who are supplying the arms to the Nigerian government, which is continuing the war, and to a lesser extent those who are supplying the Biafrans.
The legacy has to be that war is horrible, and we must do everything possible to stop the wars. I mean, I didn't care who won the war in Nigeria.
The British moved in very quickly after the war. Having been supplying arms and ammunition to the Nigerian army during the war, they now moved in with humanitarian aid to Biafra. The Irish government was very keen to bury the story, not to heroicise the missionaries, not to celebrate any input that the Irish had had, even in a humanitarian capacity.